This is a story about one doctor who controls 5 million lives in British Columbia, Canada.
I'm ordering that there'll be no social gatherings of any size. Indoor dining is paused. Our indoor sports are suspended. A ban on things like dancing. We will be closing bars and nightclubs. Indoor adult group fitness activities are also paused. Let me be very clear. There are no exceptions to the rules. For this next few weeks, bend that curve to flatten this curve. Flatten that curve. Flattening, a falling off of that curve. We have flattened our curve in the past, and we will do it again.
She was one of my heroes. But for 2 years, the BC masses have endured the longest, most severe socioeconomic restrictions since World War II. Still, there is no agreed endpoint to the restrictions. Sadly, Dr. Bonnie Henry fails to see that her endless restrictions are causing much more harm than good. And in this video, I will show why.
First question today is from Penny Daphlos, CTV.
Thank you very much. Dr. Henry, I just wanted to start with you. What is your goal right now?
In terms of what? Obviously, we want to, our goals have not changed. Our goals are to reduce serious illness and deaths and morbidity and mortality from the pandemic. It's to preserve our healthcare system so everybody, whether it's from COVID or needs care for other reasons, are able to access the care they need. And thirdly, to minimize societal disruption so that we're minimizing those negative consequences of any of the measures that we're taking to manage the pandemic.
Okay, let's analyze the data behind these three goals and see where we're at. For hospitalizations, there has actually been a 0% change compared to pre-COVID years. In many years, it was actually worse. And they admit it right here, 2 years into endless restrictions.
8,778 inpatients in BC hospitals. That's an occupancy rate of 95.1%. Typically, it's more than 100% at this time of year, should be said.
No, actually, it has always been worse than 95%. I have this 2017 Freedom of Information document that verifies BC hospitals averaged 103% occupancy from 2011 to 2016. To further corroborate this, I looked at reports about BC healthcare through these years and later, and was shocked to find in 2011, for example, a BC hospital had to commandeer a Tim Hortons to put patients in. And since 2011, every year has stories about hospitals being overwhelmed. And for all these pre-COVID years, the healthcare system did not collapse. It appears the real problem here is chronic mismanagement at the Ministry of Health. Endless restrictions won't solve it. And what about deaths? The median age of death from COVID is 82 years old. COVID is the 8th leading cause of death, causing just under 3%. Overdoses kill far more people. And influenza came in at 9th place just after COVID. Of course, all deaths are bad, but is it proportionate to continually harm all of society endlessly for a 3% increase in death? And finally, her third goal, to minimize social harm. Unfortunately, the data shows that Dr. Henry's restrictions have led to mass trauma, leaving no one unscathed and harming many irreparably. This trauma can be categorized as psycho, socio, econo, and biotrauma. Let's look at the evidence. For psychotrauma, there's been a tripling of suicidal children in the second year of restrictions. Over twice as many children have eating disorders. A doubling of depressed children. In adults, an exponential increase of depression and suicidal thinking. But the most alarming psychotrauma has been mass cognitive dissonance, caused by health officials making definitive claims that turn out false. The worst example was that vaccines prevent transmission. Look how conclusive the scientists are.
If you're vaccinated, you really don't need to worry about getting it in a way that's serious or transmitting it.
That is true. You're absolutely right. You said it correctly. The risk is extremely low of getting infected, of getting sick, or of transmitting it to anybody else. Full stop.
When you are vaccinated, it means that you are less likely to get infected. If you are infected, you shed virus for a shorter period of time, you're less likely to transmit to other people.
You're coming at a very good time because people are frightened and they are confused. Because you say, get vaccinated, get boosted, you're protected. That does not appear to be the case. Help us understand what's happening to us.
Well, when you're dealing with a virus, a variant like Omicron, we will be seeing breakthrough infections of vaccinated people. That is going to happen. The risk is extremely low. We will be seeing breakthrough infections of getting infected, spreading from person to person, of getting sick. That is going to happen, or of transmitting it to anybody else. Full stop.
Tragically, this cognitive dissonance has increased vaccine hesitancy at a critical time when vaccines successfully prevent serious illness and death. Now, for the socio-trauma, education has deteriorated like never before. Political division is surging. Families are being torn apart from within. And for the econo-trauma, thousands of small businesses and families have been financially destroyed. Women and youth employment declined dramatically, and inflation is the highest in 18 years because the government has to print money to support people who are restricted from working. This inflation is devastating low-income families the most. But perhaps the most disturbing is the biotrauma. We've seen a doubling of infant fractures and head trauma due to increased parental maltreatment. Many times, Dr. Henry closed all fitness establishments, which dramatically lowers the population's protection against physical and mental illness. Most shockingly, hundreds of disabled children are suffering because of canceled surgeries, when the hospitals are not even above their average occupancy for the last 10 years.
The family says it has been scheduled and canceled 4 times in the last 6 weeks. For a surgery, the 14-year-old from Fort St. John desperately needs to continue his long battle with a condition he has lived with since he was a toddler.
I want it as soon as possible.
If Devin doesn't get surgery, his curve is so bad, so that's going to push into his lungs. His curve is going to push into his spleen. It's going to push into his ribs. It's going to push into his heart.
The evidence is overwhelming and tragic. BC is being mass traumatized by never-ending harmful restrictions. The historical root cause? Gross incompetence at the Ministry of Health. The present root cause? Dr. Henry. No one will ever know her true intent, but I believe she truly and deeply wants the best for BC. She is an incredible scientist and communicator, but she is human, and something deep and subconscious is blinding her. You see, a crisis can give validation and opportunity to the one who solves it.
Well, fans of Dr. Bonnie Henry will soon be able to step into her shoes, quite literally. The provincial health officer has teamed up with legendary Vancouver shoemaker John Fluvog to create a pair of heels suitably named Dr. Henry.
People are going, oh, she's so great. And, she wears your shoes, John. And then she has, obviously, as you're aware, became a bit of an icon for us all during this time.
Well, this week marks the 1-year anniversary since our lives were turned upside down by the pandemic.
And one voice that's been keeping us all calm during this time is BC's top doc, Dr. Bonnie Henry. She's written a book, Be Kind, Be Calm, Be Safe. Well, listen, Bonnie, you may have been on TV, I think, this past year more than Carolyn and I. And has it really surprised you, kind of this celebrity status that you now have? You even had a pair of shoes named after you.
I do. The shoes I quite love. I still am surprised when I see my face on things or when people recognize me. It's not something that I'm used to or even getting used to.
Perhaps it is this unexpected validation and opportunity that is blinding her, without her even realizing it. No one will know. And for now, all we can do is wait.